Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to the Cupra Formentor. If you don't follow along with the European car industry that much, you're probably wondering right now, in fact, I'm pretty sure you are wondering, what the hell is a Cupra? Well, I'll tell you. Cupra is an offshoot of the Spanish automaker Seat, which, for those who don't know, has been owned by the VW Group since at least 1995. Although this isn't technically a Seat vehicle, it still follows along with the Seat tradition of naming models based on regions in Spain, except for the Leon, obviously. Although I think that is named after a region, but it is also, the Spanish word for lion. But the Formentor is named after a peninsula on the island of Mallorca, which is where rich people go to have fun, in case you didn't know. Anyway, this here is a facelift Formentor that the Cupra brand just recently arrived in Macedonia, like not even a month ago, and we got the facelifted versions of all Cupra vehicles straight away. So previously, the Formentor, as you'll see in these photos, was very similar to the Leon. In fact, it still is very similar to the Leon. They are very closely related, but in 2024, Cupra decided to create its own brand identity. Previously, it was all somewhat borrowed components from Seat vehicles. So you have the Seat grille and the headlights, but there was a Cupra badge in the middle. You get the idea. But now we have a completely new face that's unique to the Cupra models. And this face is also on the new Leon, the Tavascan electric crossover, and the flagship SUV that was recently revealed, the Terramar. So let's go ahead and have a closer look at the styling of the Formentor. So let's just, start with that new face. Previously, there was a smaller grille right in the center in which the Cupra badge sat, and there was the same headlights as you might have found on, say, a Leon. But now, there's a brand new set of headlights with 3 triangular daytime running lights that are also in a triangle configuration, with the main beam just next to them right there. And below that, you have the fog lights. I'll be honest with you, when I first saw this face, I thought that it looked a little bit strange. But now that I've, gotten used to it and seen the car in real life, I actually really like the new face. It definitely makes the car more distinctive, and it distinguishes it from a regular Seat model. Which is important because, I don't know if you've read up on this, but at one point Cupra was supposed to replace Seat entirely, and then they decided that they would keep both brands at the same time. But now that Cupra is on a different path, it needs a new face, and this face is just the right way to do it. So let's go ahead and unlock the doors real quick, or actually just flash the signals. There you go. The 3 triangle daytime running lights. And of course, they do a little dance when you unlock the doors at night, or even during the day when you approach the car, they flash in various different patterns. Also, you can see this Formentor has the optional 19-inch wheels, and they also show one of the main themes of the Formentor, and indeed of all Cupra vehicles, which is copper. Dotted throughout the exterior and especially the interior, there are copper accents, which look great on every color, but I think they especially complement the gray that this one is in. I apologize for the dust, by the way, but I went on a little adventure with this car, taking photos of it, and it's a little dusty. Sorry about that. And also, really important, we're matching. See, these sunglasses are also copper. Me and the car are matching. Not much is different with the side profile. It borrows its door handles from the Leon. There's a new LED turn signal signature on the mirrors, and this one also has the optional roof rails. And well, this angle is a better way for you to get a look at the copper accented 19-inch wheels. There are different ones available, including these really interesting, I call these no spoke wheels, but they are optional. This one has 19 inches. And in the back, you can see more noticeable changes. There's a new rear light bar, and yes, the whole thing lights up, including that Cupra logo. You have the Cupra inscription in copper accents again. The completely fake exhausts there are not accented in copper. You can get that on some models, but this one doesn't have that, unfortunately. And again, more of that triangle motif in the light signature in the back. They're arranged a little differently, but it's the same sort of thing. They light up like triangles. I will demonstrate. There's also sequential turn signals, like that. The lights are, there you go. The lights are doing their little dance, and they light up as a triangle. So overall, what do I think of the design of the Cupra Formentor? Well, I am a huge fan. Like, I've been, checking out the Formentor here and there before it arrived in Macedonia, before it got a facelift, and I always thought it was a very interesting vehicle. And it certainly looks cool and distinctive, and it differentiates itself from its competitors. Even in the gray color, the flashes of copper add a lot of design flair. But I think the best color you can have on the Formentor is this matte green gold sort of deal. I saw a Formentor just the other day while I had this car on test. I saw a Formentor with these wheels in that color and it looked awesome. But overall, the Formentor is a very cool looking crossover. It genuinely looks cool, and I salute Cupra for that. They really put a lot of thought and effort into this design. Oh, and by the way, Americans, you better learn what Cupra is, because y'all are getting Cupra in a few years' time in your market. Let's move it along now to cargo space and practicality like we normally do. First thing I want to show you is the supremely disappointing key fob. This is the key. It's the same as pretty much every other MQB platform car in the VW group, and very disappointing. And it has the same problem as those other keys. It's all glossy rubber and it gets covered in fingerprints. Thank you, autofocus, very easily. Anyway, 3 buttons, standard fare, unlock, tailgate release, and lock. Hold down the tailgate button and the tailgate opens up for you automatically, which is nice. So this cargo area in this particular Formentor measures 450 liters, or this many cubic feet. That's actually the biggest cargo capacity you can have in the Formentor, and I'll explain why a little later. And this cargo area has all of your standard customary stuff. There are hooks for grocery bags or similar stuff there. There's a tethering point there and another one there. The lip here is not particularly big. There are these little shelf areas, which are actually great for holding cartons of milk, as I discovered the other day. These are my new microphones. Let me know if they sound good. They probably don't. And you have a false floor with a space saver spare wheel right below that. And you have your standard parcel shelf that's held in by strings, and you can fold down the rear seats for even more cargo space. So overall, a useful and practical cargo area in the Formentor. And it's not very boxy, so you might struggle with taller items even if you do remove the parcel shelf, but it's very practical. And as I said, this Formentor has the biggest cargo area you can have, and I'll tell you why later. When you're done with your cargo area, you press this button and it closes just like that. Standard stuff. What about the space in the back seats? Let's have a look at that. So, holy shit, that's a lot of legroom. Okay, this massive bucket seat, we'll talk about them in just a moment, is in my driving position. You already know, 5'11" and a half, 1.8 meters tall, Discord admin in width. Hopefully not anymore very soon, but currently still Discord moderator in width. And there's a lot of legroom here. I'm actually genuinely impressed, because this is not the biggest of vehicles. It's only like 10 centimeters longer than the Leon, and it has a sloped roofline, but still a more than adequate amount of knee room. Even if you are taller, you're not going to have any problem fitting back here at all. And headroom, that's good too. I'll demonstrate that in a moment. But now let's discuss the middle seat. So there's a pretty substantial hump in the floor because you can get the Formentor with all-wheel drive, but these footwells seem to be quite sizable, so let's go ahead and scoot around onto the middle seat, ow, and see. Well, this seat is pushed all the way back pretty much, but assuming that this seat is in the same position as this one, well, I suppose it's fine. It does eat into the outer two seats just a little bit, and the headroom is fine. So if you absolutely have to carry 5 people in the back of a Formentor, it should be fine. There's my matching sunglasses again. Headroom, I don't know why I've never angled the camera like this before, but there you go. Pretty solid amount of headroom, even if you are taller. On the door, you have this really cool Alcantara trim that is also on the seats. I'll show you that in a second. You have sizable door storage in here. I think this will fit a large bottle, no problem at all. Here's your climate vents, your temperature control for the rear, your 2 USB-C ports, so your passengers won't have to fight over who gets to use it. And as you might expect, there's a center console with cup holders and a pass-through in from the cargo area into the car for super long items. So overall, the back seats of the Formentor are a pleasant place to be. And now we move on to the front. Let me just quickly show you the keyless entry system. There's a little indent here on the handle. You push that and the doors will lock. And then when you're ready to go back in, standard stuff. And there's your familiar yet nicer interior. The most notable thing about the front of the Formentor on the inside are these bucket seats. They are fully trimmed in Alcantara except for these bolsters. They are leather and they have, I don't know if this will come across on, oh, it is, okay. There are these little blue dots and this interesting little pattern going across the center of the seats. Now, usually I would think that blue clashes with copper, but it actually looks great. It's very subtle, and the stitching here is also copper, so that works very well. And you have a little hole here for racing harnesses. It's not actually for that, but it looks cool, so who cares? And now we are inside the Formentor, where I am reminded that these seats are not fat-ass friendly. They are quite tight. Let's begin as we normally do and start up the Formentor. All you have to do is apply the brake, and your starter button, instead of here or back here, it's on the steering wheel, like an Alfa or a Ferrari. And frankly, I think every car should have the starter button here because it makes so much sense. But anyway, put on the brake, push it, boom. And because it's a mild hybrid, there's no starter motor, it just roars to life. First thing that greets you when you enter into the Formentor, I was not planning for that to rhyme, is this really nice looking steering wheel. It's very similar to what you'd find in a Seat, but it's a little more embellished. It has much thicker leather with these big grip extensions here on the left and right side, obviously. You have your perforations here, that copper stitching on the inside, some more copper accents over here, and the logo, and this whole central airbag cover is actually, well, it's made to look like carbon fiber, which is a nice touch. Cruise control and audio controls here, and miscellaneous other controls. Also in the middle, you have the horn, which isn't very premium sounding. This particular Formentor has the 7-speed dual-clutch DSG automatic transmission. You can also get a 6-speed manual, and the plug-in hybrid comes with a 6-speed DSG, and it's controlled through this familiar VW Group gear selector. Pull it all the way down, goes into drive, pull it down again for sport mode, halfway up for neutral or halfway down, all the way up for reverse, brings up your 360-degree camera and your parking sensors, and then you push the P to put it in park. There's your parking brake. And that's really all there is to say about that. One interesting thing is the shift selector here is not covered in chrome and stuff. It's much more subtle. It has a little bit of glossy black, this little pattern here, which is actually nice to the touch, even though this is just hard plastic. It's very nice and very easy to use. And sometimes I find myself, technically, I believe you're supposed to, activate it like this. But sometimes I find myself doing this or something along those lines. It's fun. And you also have that copper accenting around this whole area here, and a prominent button to disable the stability control, because performance car. So this is your infotainment system. It's absolutely massive. I believe this screen is 12 inches in diameter, or 12.3. It's huge, and it's directly in front of you. So, well, not directly, that's directly in front of you, but no, it's very close. You don't have to lean over to touch anything on the screen. It's placed in a very convenient spot. This is the VW Group's latest infotainment software, but it's running a custom skin for specific to Cupra vehicles. This is your home screen here. You have your phone information if you have a phone connected. Obviously, there's wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. If you swipe along here, you'll see your trip data, just an extra display for that since you can already see it in your gauge cluster. If you tap this, you have your apps and various different settings for the car. This is all fairly standard stuff. We've seen it a million times before. Built-in navigation, media, telephone, full link, which is what Cupra calls Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, sound settings, vehicle settings, drive profiles. By the way, the car also has a built-in Wi-Fi hotspot. Pinned at the top of the screen there, you have your vehicle settings for some miscellaneous quick shortcuts that you might want. I'm going to open the window because I'm starting to sweat in here. As well as your driving data and status of the vehicle, things like that. The other pinned item here is the sound settings. There are various different profiles for how you want your music to sound. This P button here brings you to your park assist. The car can actually park for you automatically, and you can also bring up your cameras. which are very solid. They're not the highest resolution. I don't know if that comes up on camera, but they get the job done more than enough. And you have this little bar here, which is kind of like a notification shade on an Android device. You swipe down, you have notifications in relation to the system, and some various different shortcuts like disabling the excessive speed warning, the auto start stop, the Wi-Fi hotspot, muting the stereo, and your traffic program. Now, I know I breezed through this quite a bit, but there's really not a whole lot else to say. I've used this infotainment system a lot of times. I covered it in detail in the Octavia review. It really is the same system, just with a few minor differences. The one major difference is absolutely no shortcut buttons whatsoever. If you want your climate controls, you have to press Klima, and there they are. You have automatic mode here in your temperatures with these sliders. And yes, by the way, these sliders here, yes, they're touch capacitive and they provide no discernible feedback, but they do light up at night. So thank goodness for that. Heated seats right there. Oh, shut up. I'm going to turn that off now because I'll sweat even more. Front defrost and rear defrost, which is interesting that those options are there because you also have them over here. We'll cover that little control panel in a second. Passenger heated seat, that's sensitive. Recirculating air, here you have your climate zones. Air conditioning, air care, which filters the air coming into the car. Because I'm currently in top 3 most polluted cities in all of Europe and one of the top 10 most polluted cities in the world, that's a very useful feature. And that's about it for your climate controls. If you don't want to activate your heated steering wheel through here, you have a separate little shortcut on the steering wheel. Now, remember what I said about the lack of shortcut buttons in here? Well, yes. If you can't find it in the center or on the steering wheel or over here, then it's in there. I will give it a pass because this is the VW Group's latest infotainment system and it's far better than what they had before. But still, physical controls will always be preferred, but beggars can't be choosers, I guess. Center control stack, I already showed you that. There's the power locks, that one I didn't demonstrate. Over here, you have a wireless charging pad for your phone, which hates cases. If you want to use that properly, don't bother with a case. You have 2 USB-C ports there in case you prefer using a cable. And in terms of the center control stack, that's all you have. So let's move along to what's in front of the driver. So as I said before, on the left side of the steering wheel, you have your stereo volume control, and you press that to mute it. Distance adjustment for your adaptive cruise control. Cancel a shortcut to disable or enable some of the safety systems. The carbon fiber. It actually looks nice. I'll give it that. Over here, you have these 3, so the view button, these arrows, and this wheel, they're all for the gauge cluster screen, the track buttons, and the heated steering wheel that you already saw. So let's go through the gauge cluster really quick. First of all, this is one of the default layouts, just standard dials. If you press view, it changes to these dials that are sort of at the ends of the screen, which looks pretty cool. You press view again, they go away and they just show whatever was inside of them previously. Like in this case, we have the compass and average fuel consumption. Interestingly, that side can also show a G meter. And if you press view again, you have a tachometer right in the middle and a turbo boost gauge and another G meter on the left side. If you press view again, you're back to this. Now, when you use the scroll wheel, you can see your navigation map or just the adaptive cruise control display and whatever's in front of you. And when you're on this screen, you can press on the wheel itself to change which trip data you want to be looking at. If you have the map screen, you can click OK on the wheel and then scroll to zoom in and out of the map, although it's much better to do this with the other display so you can see more of the map. And that's about it for adjusting the center. However, if you press on either one of these arrows, you can adjust what's shown inside of each of the dials. And it has a lot of the same stuff. This one can show you temperatures, instant power and torque meters, which is always fun. The total odometer, you can also have nothing. So if you see this close, you press OK and it will show nothing on there. Your instant fuel consumption, and back to that again. And then with the right arrow, you can switch to this side and show you there's your G meter. It displays Apple CarPlay and Bluetooth device stuff here if you have the device connected. I do not right now, but that's what that can show. And that's about it for your gauge cluster screen. And I think that it's a fantastic one. It's very similar to what you might find in a different VW vehicle, but it's, you know, a little bit different, a little sportier. It has the copper accents and these much sportier looking numbers here. It's a very well designed gauge cluster screen, and it's highly configurable, and that's awesome. The only thing is, it doesn't always display your temperatures, and I'm somebody who loves to pay attention to my temperatures, but you have to configure that through the left dial. You can't see them constantly. Here's your turn signal stock, as standard as it gets. So is the wiper stock. It's what you'd find in any VW vehicle. One thing I didn't mention are the shift paddles. If you whack on the paddle like that, you go into manual mode. The car's in park right now, it's not doing anything. But you go into manual mode, and you can change gears through the pedals. Or you can just plop the shifter into sport mode, and the car will shift for you automatically, but it holds the revs a little bit higher. For this Cupra button here is your drive mode selector. And because performance car, there's no eco drive mode. There's only normal and sport mode, and that little dude means personal, like individual drive mode that you can configure yourself. No eco mode, because this is a performance car. What the hell do you need an eco mode for, right? By the way, the steering wheel adjusts manually. As you can see, plenty of adjustment in that. It's actually quite easy to get a comfortable driving position. The driver's seat is power adjustable and has memory settings. The passenger seat is manual. And over here, you have this little capacitive touch panel. You can't see it right now, but if you approach this with your finger at night, it actually lights up a little brighter so you can see it better. This mode button is for your main beam controls. Obviously, your high beams are on the stock here. Front fog lights, rear fog lights, max front defrost, and rear defrost. I'm glad that there's separate controls for those two, because those are quite important things. Climate vent, which is accented in copper. More climate vents accented in copper, and another one over there. And this part of the dashboard, which is entirely soft touch and it's actually really nice, is also stitched with that copper stitching. That piece over there is harder plastic, but come on, you're not going to reach over there and pet that, are you, while you're driving especially? This little textured material here, this is obviously plastic, but it's nice. It feels very high quality and well made. And actually, the whole car is very high quality and well made. This part here where your knee rests while you're driving is soft and padded, and it's way nicer. Time to wrap this up with interior quality and storage. So I did briefly touch upon the interior quality, but it's all very nice and solid and well put together. There's no flex or creaks anywhere. The dashboard, as I said, this part is all soft touch with this copper stitching. It's beautiful. So is this textured material that goes around the rest of the dashboard. This armrest on the top of the door is soft touch plastic. Alcantara here, that same Alcantara that's on the seats, and this padded little armrest, and this stitched door handle. It is hard plastic, but it's stitched. It looks nice. And these gray door handles. The bottom here is obviously hard plastic, and so is that frontal part of the dashboard, but as I said, you're not going to pet that while you're driving. So overall, a solid interior, very well made, and crucially, there's basically nothing in the way of piano black plastic. You have just a little bit here, the screen obviously, and its shortcut controls there, and in terms of piano black, that's all you have. Everything else is matte finish, so it's very easy to keep clean no matter what it is you may be doing. So props to Cupra for this interior. It's great. As for storage, you have a sizable door pocket for a large bottle and something else you might want to store in there. No hidden storage here, disappointingly. You have your wireless charging pad over there that I showed you before. You have these little two areas. One of them is shallower, the other one's deeper. I'm not sure what you might fit in there, but they're there if you need them. You have two cup holders, perfectly sized for paper espresso cups or larger paper espresso cups like I take with me. This adjustable center armrest is pretty deep. This is very annoying. Pretty deep, and it has a little 12-volt outlet in there to power some electronics that you might need. And finally, the glove box, which is perfectly sized, and the lid feels very high quality. Here's your overhead lighting controls, which are all piano black. This is the same as you might find in other VW vehicles. The rear view mirror itself dims automatically, and you can see that the rear visibility could be better. You do have the cameras, but the rear window is about that big, so there might be just the littlest bit of a struggle. As for complaints about this interior, well, I already mentioned the whole I swear to God, the dude in the leaf blower better not start blowing leaves right now. the obvious, I wish there were more shortcut buttons outside of the infotainment system, etc., etc. There's a really stupid option in the infotainment system that was enabled when I took the car from the dealer on like the other day. You can enable only unlocking the driver's door through the key fob and have the rest of them be locked. Why? At first I thought there was something wrong with the car, but then I dove into the system and it turns out that such an option exists for some reason. Like, okay, I'm not trying to be an asshole or anything. Please let me know in the comments why you would want such an option. Unless if you drive the car yourself and you don't plan to put anything in the back seats whatsoever, people or things. But that's a stupid option and I disabled it. Other than that, the interior of the Formentor is a great place to be. One of my favorite features on the interior is the ambient lighting. I'm going to close the door. So the ambient lighting strip starts from here, goes all the way around to the passenger door. And as well as being highly configurable, it's also reactive. So if I put the hazard lights on, you can see it's currently flashing orange. And it gets better than that because the blind spot monitoring system is tied to the ambient lighting strip. So if there's a car coming in your blind spot, this piece instead of the mirror will light up in yellow. And because it's here directly in your peripheral vision, there is absolutely no way that you're going to miss it. And there's extra ambient lighting underneath this panel, which can be colored separately from this one. Very cool feature and very thoughtful design. The mirrors are a little small, but they get the job done. Hello, C4. But the ambient lighting in the Cupra Formentor is one of my favorite interior features. Let's talk about the powertrains in the Formentor. I have decided to switch to voiceover because I completely fumbled this part of the video, and as I discovered, the powertrain lineup for the Formentor is quite complicated. So this one has a 1.5-liter mild hybrid turbo 4-cylinder, or the ETSI, making 150 horsepower, and that sends its power to the front wheels through a 7-speed dual-clutch automatic transmission. You can also get on the base Formentor, which is called just the Formentor, you can get a 2-liter turbo diesel with 150 horsepower, a 1.5 non-hybrid TSI 150 horsepower as well, and you can have that with a manual transmission. You can get a 2-liter TSI with 204 horsepower, that one comes standard with all-wheel drive, or a plug-in hybrid with a 1.5-liter turbo 4-cylinder engine making 205 horsepower, and that one has a 6-speed DSG. Then when you step up to the Formentor VZ, which is the top-of-the-line model, you get a choice of 3 completely different engines. You get a 2-liter TSI with 265 horsepower, which is front-wheel drive only, and comes with a 7-speed DSG. Then you get a 2-liter TSI with 333 horsepower. That one comes standard with all-wheel drive and the 7-speed DSG. And finally, the more powerful plug-in hybrid with a 1.5-liter turbo 4-cylinder, making 272 horsepower. And that one is also equipped with a 6-speed DSG. You might remember I said earlier that this Formentor has the largest cargo capacity. That's because the plug-in hybrids lose a significant amount of cargo space due to the batteries. I hope that wasn't too confusing. And also, disappointingly, you can no longer get the Formentor with the turbo 5-cylinder engine from the Audi RS3 in the special VZ5 edition, but these other ones will have to do. This particular Formentor can reach 60 miles per hour, 100 kph in about 8 seconds, and the top speed is this much. So what's it actually like to drive? Let's find out. Let's go ahead and start, as we normally do, with town driving. This is where the mild hybrid system in this particular Formentor really came into its own. So, as you might expect, at speeds below about 20 kilometers an hour, the engine will cut off as you come to a stop to save you some more gas. And occasionally, while you're on the move, if you let go of the gas pedal or stabilize at a certain speed and rev range, the engine will cut off as well to improve your fuel economy. So, my fuel economy varied quite a bit while I had the Formentor, but I saw numbers as low as 5.5 liters, but that's in ideal situations. Realistically, it's closer to 7 liters per 100 kilometers of driving, regardless of the type of driving that you're doing or where it is. That converts to this many mpgs. As for other aspects of town driving, well, the Formentor is pretty easy to drive. One very nice quality that the Formentor has is that it's not especially big, which makes it much more manageable in tighter city areas. The powertrain is very calm and very docile, and most of the time it's not even running if you're in a traffic jam, let's say. So your fuel consumption will be great, and it's very relaxing. The steering is pretty lightweight. You have an automatic transmission, which makes things a lot easier, and it's overall pretty solid. It's not all that comfortable though. It's a little bit on the harsher side in terms of ride quality, but again, it's a performance car, you kind of expect that. Same applies to the highway. The Formentor is a surprisingly aerodynamic vehicle, and it doesn't really have all that much in the way of road or wind noise, especially wind noise. There's a little bit of road noise due to the poor quality of roads around here, but it's a very pleasant experience on the highway. The only thing is, the engine sounds a little upset when you rev it out. I imagine it's a different story with the others, but for the 1.5 TSI, it does sound a little rough when you give it the full beans. And speaking of giving it the full beans, that's where the Formentor comes into its own, because this is the most fun I've ever had driving a crossover, and I don't say that lightly. The Formentor is really fun to drive when the road becomes twisty. The total lack of body roll relative to what it is seriously impressive. The steering is super direct in sport mode. It's very responsive, even though this is not the most powerful engine in the lineup. It's still surprisingly fast. It feels faster than what it actually is, and the cornering abilities and the way it leans into corners so directly, and the fact that there's barely any body roll to speak of, is seriously impressive. I was laughing out loud when I drove the Formentor hard on some back roads that I found. If you really want your crossover SUV to be fun to drive, this is the way to go right now. As an overall experience, the Formentor was a great companion, regardless of the speed or the road we were traveling on. And that concludes the review of the Cupra Formentor. One thing I didn't mention in this video is that the Cupra brand has become very successful in a very short amount of time. There was a lot of debate in the VW group whether or not the Cupra brand should stay or should it all be merged, Seat and Cupra should become one brand. They will still be separate brands, but I think that Cupra has an even brighter future ahead of it, and that's evident in the Formentor, which is an excellent crossover. The Cupra Formentor gets a score of 8.5 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching this video, everybody. If you liked it, be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Follow the community tab for regular updates on upcoming videos, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.